I've just returned from spending 2 weeks in China, and in today's video, I'm going to outline all the tips and important information that I think any first-timer traveling to China needs to know both before and during their trip. Which are, by the way, things that I'm grateful to have either known thanks to research prior to my trip or things that I learned on the ground during my trip. From entry requirements, what to know before your trip, apps you need, how to navigate public transport, and much, much more. By the way, I'm Steve from the Fat Life Project, and my channel is full of travel guides just like the one that you're about to watch right now that's going to help you navigate yourself in cities around the world like a pro. And so if that is your vibe, definitely subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with visa requirements, China initially announced a 15-day visa-free policy for several European and Asian nations back in 2023, but that has since been expanded multiple times, with the latest being a 30-day visa-free stay, which as of the writing of this video includes over 45 countries including Australia and Singapore. However, if you're from the United States, Philippines, or India, you will need a visa, of which the visa fees cost around 60 to 150 USD, depending if you're applying for a single entry, double entry, or 6 or 12-month multiple entry visas. Do note that the website says that the visa will take around 4 working days to complete, although you can cut it down to either 3 or even 2 days for an additional fee. And if you plan to visit China whilst you're in transit, you could also be eligible for a visa-free transit, available from 24 hours to up to 240 hours, aka around 10 days. That policy is available for 55 countries, provided that you can actually provide proof that you are transiting from China to another destination country. Documents you will need to provide include confirm onward tickets to another country, a valid passport that has at least 6 months on it, and you will also only be able to stay within allowed areas. And if you have all of that, you do not actually need to apply for an actual visa. Instead, once you arrive at the airport, head to one of the counters that look like this to fill in a temporary entry permit. I'm also, by the way, mostly talking about the countries that my subscribers are from. If you're not from any of these countries, fear not, I have placed links in my description box that will contain a list of all the visa-free countries and also visa application links if you need to apply for a visa. That is, however, completely separate from the arrival card, which you will need to fill in regardless of whether or not you needed a visa to enter. That used to be a paper arrival card, but has only, I believe, at the end of last year been completely digitized for all cities. The process is fairly straightforward and it is free. I recommend submitting this at least 3 days prior to your arrival. But perhaps the most important question that almost everybody wants to know before their trip to China is, do I or do I not need a VPN? The answer depends on your setup. Allow me to explain. If you actually use and activate an international Esim prior to your trip, you will find that you can access everything with no issue. And that includes Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc. I have actually done this twice. First, my trip to Xi'an last year and my recent trip this year, and can confirm that you will definitely have no issues. If you're looking for recommendations, I'm a big fan of unlimited data. So Olafly's unlimited data eSIM is a pretty good option, as that way you will not have to worry about topping up your mobile data along the way. I believe their 5-day plan goes for $29.50. That being said, unlike most of the other countries I've been to, this is one country where it could actually be beneficial having a local number, as that will allow you to do, amongst other things, order food delivery on Meituan to be delivered to your hotel room, or say if you wanted to try out those famous drone deliveries, or to even reserve a seat at highly popular restaurants. Do note though, if you do get a local SIM card, you will need a VPN to access social media. And if that is the case, I would recommend something like Surfshark, as that would be the most budget-friendly option. So should I or should I not get a SIM card? Well, personally for me, I did both. I got the cheapest SIM card available. I believe the one I got was 10 gigs for 7 days, as I did not intend to use it for data, but rather just so I had a local phone number. But at the same time, I also had an eSIM activated so that I could browse social media without a VPN. And whilst we're on the topic of connection, let's now talk about the apps that you're going to need in China. Because much like Korea or Japan, China also does not always use what everybody else is using. Starting with Maps, Google Maps definitely does not work great in China. And previously, this has been a big issue, by the way, because none of their local maps were available in English until quite recently. Maps Global or Maps Gouda is now available in English. So definitely download that. Though that being said, I personally find apps Apple Maps to be a truly underrated alternative. You will also find a majority of the menus, street signs, especially when you start venturing further away from the city, to be only available in Chinese. And additionally, you may also be in situations where the local does not speak any English, and so a translation app is going to come in handy. The most access-friendly option would be Google Translate, so download that if you don't already have it. It will not be 100% accurate, but it will be enough to give you context so that you at least know what you're ordering. And you can even use Google Translate to communicate with the locals like this.
请问可以给我点水吗?
Feeling that ChatGPT is also an excellent alternative. Just jumping back in to add in this app as I realized whilst I was editing that I totally forgot to add in Dianping, and how could I leave Dianping out? Think of Dianping as a combination of Google Map reviews and Uber Eats. Basically, forget about your TikTok and Instagram food research prior to your trip, just download this app. The default language, as you can see, is in Chinese, but not to worry, just click on translation and you'll get it in English. The app will basically show you all the restaurants that are in the city that you're visiting, and you can sort them by proximity to you, by the overall rating, and my personal favorite filter feature, by valid discount vouchers that you can use at said venues. You can even peruse the menu of the restaurant ahead of time before you get there, and I honestly found so many local gems through Dianping that were tourist-free and delicious. Honestly, just download Dianping and thank me later. China also, in my opinion, has one of the most idiot-proof public transportation systems ever. Like, it is literally impossible to get lost. However, you may still, in some situations, depending on your traveling situation or who you're traveling with, need to at some point catch cabs. In which case, Uber or Grab does not work in China. Instead, download Didi Chuxing, which by the way works exactly the same. So I won't walk you through how to book a cab. However, I will say that you can pay for your rides using a debit or credit card or via WeChat or AliPay, which would actually be my recommended alternative, as you will need to set up WeChat or AliPay anyway, seeing as you'll be using either one of them to pay for absolutely everything in China. And that leads quite nicely into this next section about payment gateways. Both WeChat or AliPay will work in China. I personally prefer and more familiar with WeChatPay, as I already use WeChat as a communications app. You do not need a China bank account to set up WeChatPay and can easily link it to your card. Simply tap on wallet, then cards, then add a card. You'll then need to provide things like your legal full name, phone number, nationality, and passport details. Set a 6-digit PIN, and once that all goes through, that's it. You're done. You're ready to use WeChatPay. However, I would still recommend setting up AliPay as a backup. The setup steps are very similar, so I won't walk you through that. Just a quick note to my Malaysian subscribers that your Touch and Go will also work in China as AliPay. So if you've already got that set up, you can also use that as a backup instead. Setting up both are fairly straightforward. However, if you do need a step-by-step guide, I do have it over on my website, which you can check out, link in my description box. To pay using either of these payment methods, simply scan the merchant's payment code, or alternatively, the merchant will scan your QR code, which looks a little something like this, and that's it. You will also, by the way, be using WeChat or AliPay to pay for public transport, but that requires a slightly different setup. More on that in a bit. Using your existing credit or debit card will be the most straightforward way to set up WeChat or AliPay, but just be aware that your card will also, in most circumstances, charge you an overseas transaction fee and also exchange fees. And so if you're looking to save or at least minimize those fees, I would consider using a card like Wise or Utrip and linking those cards to your WeChat or AliPay. I personally linked my Utrip card to my WeChatPay and used it throughout this trip because it charges 0 foreign exchange fees and also allows you to withdraw up to 1,500 AUD from ATMs around the world fee-free. Withdrawing cash, Steve, why would I need to do that? Isn't China a cashless society? I mean, to be fair, that is a fantastic point, but what most people will not tell you is that WeChat or AliPay can also sometimes fail, be it because of internet connection or a system error. This in fact happened to me twice during this recent trip, and the store also, by the way, does not accept credit or debit cards, which is why I would recommend you have some cash on hand. You don't need a lot, just carry some in smaller denominations. I mean, you may not end up using it, but fortune always favors the prepared. Speaking about fortune favoring the prepared, one thing that I feel is not talked enough, at least in the travel guides that I saw, is that only certain power banks are accepted in China, and if you have the wrong kind, they will be confiscated. You see, your power bank will need to have the China Compulsory Certification logo, indicated either by a triple C or 3C, on your power bank if your power bank doesn't have this, or too old to the point where the logo is no longer obvious, your power bank will be taken away from you and you will not be getting it back. Additionally, the device's capacity must also be under 100 watts per hour. Oh, but Steve, they're not going to check it. Yes, they will. And this will happen at the point where you plan to catch a high-speed train or a flight, something that we're going to be covering shortly. But in the meantime, just make sure you pack a power bank that is compliant. Right, now that we've cleared all the things that you need to know beforehand, let's now talk about the things that you need to know during your trip in China. This first one holds true for any city, but especially China, and that is that you will need to bring your passport everywhere as it will be considered your main identification document. And you'll be surprised at the points where you'll be asked for it. Like for example, if you plan to visit a museum and want to get a ticket, guess what? You're going to need to have your passport ready. And even if you've already pre-booked your ticket, to get in, the guard will ask you for your ticket and your passport before allowing you to get into the venue. It truly was, if I'm being honest, one of the more annoying things that I had to deal with during this trip. Like imagine standing out in the sun, trying to get one of these machines to recognize my passport so that I can complete the purchase. Which leads quite nicely into my next tip, which is if you can, pre-book the tickets for the venues that you want to go to via trip.com. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I only recommend it because Trip will require you to have your passport uploaded anyway, so you don't have to scan your passport every single time you're purchasing a ticket into something. We also spoke about using WeChat or AliPay to pay for public transport. I'm also aware that some cities such as Beijing and Shanghai do allow you to tap onto public transport using a credit or debit card. However, do note that this method is going to work out to be more expensive for you, which is why I would still recommend you use WeChat or AliPay to pay for public transport. It is so easy to use. However, you will need to activate a mini program in WeChat or a digital transport card in AliPay. Here's how. For WeChat, what you want to do is to slide down on the main WeChat interface, and that would bring up the mini program interface. Search for 乘车码 and add that program in. Don't worry if you can't read it. You see those three dots on the right? Click on that and select translate. From there, just choose the city that you're in, authorize the mini program to deduct the transportation cost from your WeChat Pay. And once that's done, a QR code that looks a little something like this will come up, and that's it, you're set to go. Just remember that the QR code for subway and buses can be different. 乘车码 should work in most China cities, but it can sometimes, for whatever reason, not work in a particular city. For example, this happened to me in Guangzhou, in which case you would need to find one of the local alternatives. I activated the Guangzhou Metro QR instead, and that worked fine. And if that happens to you in any other China city, here are some local alternatives that you could consider activating instead of 乘车码. AliPay setup is fairly similar. Just tap on transport on AliPay and activate accordingly. If you need the step-by-step instruction guide, again, that's going to be over on my website. I will put the link in my description box. This is, however, completely different and will not work if you're planning to travel in between cities, as you will either need to ride a high-speed train or catch a flight. So should you fly or catch a train? The answer is that it kind of depends. Like for example, if you're planning to go from Guangzhou to Shenzhen, the high-speed train will literally be around an hour, making it the cheaper and faster option. However, for some other trips, like for example from Guangzhou to Shanghai, flying might be a better option, as that flight will take you around 2.5 hours versus 6 or 7 hours for a high-speed train to take you the same way. Though if you're planning to catch a flight, do bear in mind that you will need to get to the airport earlier, security clearance, etc. And you will also need to wait for your luggage when you arrive at your point of destination. I personally covered 4 cities in under 2 weeks, and so flights were definitely the more efficient way for me to travel. However, if you plan to travel at a more leisurely pace, overnight high-speed trains would be more comfortable for you. Either option is very easily bookable via Trip. Again, this is not sponsored, but I just found the interface to be super user-friendly, and also it kept sending me alerts on my high-speed train and flight schedule, on the latest arrival updates, and also exactly where and what time to be at. You will also need to, by the way, be alert when you're walking on footpaths in China, as they're often also used by delivery bikes and scooters, and so if you're constantly on your phone, for example, you might get knocked over. There are also no separate smoking areas in China, and whilst indoor smoking is technically banned, you will still find it being done to some degree, especially in public toilets, and sometimes even in hotel rooms. So hot tip, always request for a non-smoking room when you're booking hotels. Smoking aside, I had a lot of fun in China. I love that it's a country that has so much deep historical significance to it, and the food was amazing. I will over the next couple of weeks be uploading my travel guides for Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Chongqing and Shanghai. So subscribe and turn on your notifications if you want to be notified the moment those drop. If you're interested to see the terracotta warriors in Xi'an, you'll be glad to know that I have already been last year and have done a travel guide about it. I'm going to link that at the end of this video so that you can go ahead and watch that next. Most importantly, I do hope that you found value in today's video, and if you have, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all the good things that you know are going to appease those holy YouTube algorithm gods, but much more importantly, will just make my day as a content creator. Specifically, if you do have a question or feedback for me, drop them in the comment section, as I do love hearing from the people who take time to watch my videos. As always, I hope that you have a fantastic day ahead, or that you've already had a good day. I'm going to see you very soon in the next video. 再见